A time comes when Earth's atmosphere becomes too toxic for humanity to survive without the aid of special medications and masks. A corporation called Ethera holds a monopoly on a drug called AI Remedy, which they claim is a remedy that protects against the toxins. Ella is the face of the advertising campaign, promising salvation to everyone, though she herself doesn't really believe in the miracle. And yet there are people conducting independent research alongside Ethera, trying to find alternative ways to survive. One day, a chemist named Solomon learns that a banned substance is being circulated in clubs, something that closely resembles his new development. He decides to conduct a field test by swapping it with his new formula. Meanwhile, Ella prepares for another appearance and remembers her mother, who took her own life because she could no longer breathe. The girl doesn't like constantly being compared to her mother. On top of that, her boyfriend Tully is throwing a party tonight, and she really doesn't feel like going. Ella calls her best friend, not knowing that Gina is riding in Tully's car and that the two have started a relationship. Tully has long wanted to confess the affair to Ella, but Gina insists he not do it today, on the anniversary of Ella's mother's death. Gina and Tully enter the dealer's house to pick up the substances he sells at the club. Ella rides the subway home and tries to call her friend again. Gina finally picks up, and Ella says once more that she won't be coming to the party. Meanwhile, Tully waits for the dealer and watches a TV broadcast featuring Eric O'Connors, the son of Ethera's president and the lead scientist overseeing the development of the drug. He states that the company can fully meet demand and help anyone in need. But during the live show, a caller named Lazarus interrupts, accusing Eric of lying, claiming that the drug is only sold to the chosen few. The dealer steps away and asks Tully to wait, but Tully notices an open door to the lab where Solomon works. He sneaks in and swipes one of the vials, filled with a blue substance. At the same time, Eric leaves the studio furious about the call and assures his father that he will find and punish Lazarus. He's also been keeping an eye on Solomon and is ready to catch him as soon as his research succeeds. Meanwhile, Ella returns home and again remembers her mother. Just then, her father calls and asks her not to go anywhere. That becomes the final argument in favor of going to the party. She arrives and looks for Tully among the guests, while he sneaks off to the bathroom with Gina and offers her the new drug to try. Ella catches them and makes a scene. Gina runs off and Tully chases after her, unaware that he's dropped the vial. Ella finds the little bottle and impulsively drinks its contents. She walks into the living room and starts dancing with the first guy she sees until she spots Tully and follows him. At the same time, Eric is conducting tests on a rat, injecting it with a drug being developed by Ethera. Ella begins to feel unwell and heads to the bathroom, leaning over the toilet. The guy who's into her tries to help, but she drives him away and loses consciousness. Meanwhile, at Eric's lab, his assistant Angela reports that the caller from the TV show has been traced to another country. Ella regains consciousness and climbs into the bathtub, confused by what's happening to her body. Eric receives a call from his son Max, who lives with his mother, saying he wants to come visit. At the same time, the dealers Tully stole from arrive at his house, but they're actually members of the resistance. Upon seeing them, Tully bolts for the bathroom, but they catch up to him. Ella hides underwater and goes unnoticed. Tully claims he doesn't know where the drug went, but they don't believe him. Solomon orders them to retrieve it at all costs. After they leave, Ella emerges from the water and admits to Tully that she took and drank the drug. He runs after Solomon's people, locking Ella in the bathroom. But when they return, the girl is nowhere to be found. Tully snatches a gun from one of the guys. The man tries to take it back. A shot is fired and Tully is wounded. Solomon's people leave, not wanting trouble with the police. Lying on the floor, Tully suddenly sees Ella hanging from the ceiling. She jumps down and, horrified, shows him her mutagenic changes, including enhanced strength. She leaves, but notices that Solomon's people are still in the house and returns for Tully. At that moment, Gina pulls up to Tully's house. Ella smashes the reinforced bathroom window, which alerts Solomon's men. They chase after the couple as Ella and Tully try to escape across the rooftop. Gina sees Tully balancing on the edge and, not realizing that Ella is trying to save him, assumes she's pushing him. Tully slips and falls to his death. Solomon yells at Ella to come with him, saying only he can help her. But just then, the police arrive at the house. Ella flees the scene. Running into the street, she collapses in front of a car. The same guy who had tried to help her at Tully's house is behind the wheel. He takes her away. Later, Gina tells the police that Ella killed Tully. Meanwhile, Eric's operatives who've been monitoring Solomon report a strange girl suddenly involved in the case, someone the scientist desperately wants to find. Eric orders them to locate her. The guy brings Ella home and kisses her, but she regains consciousness and pushes him away, horrified to see a spike growing out of her elbow. The guy runs off and she rushes to the bathroom where she sees her body changing, growths and chitinous spurs forming on her skin. Terrified, she puts on loose clothes and a mask, then heads to the hospital. But when she shows a nurse the changes, the nurse orders her into quarantine and calls for security. Ella hides in the room of a girl dying from toxin exposure, climbing to the ceiling like an insect. When the girl confesses she doesn't have enough medicine, Ella gives her the last of her own supply, stored inside a medallion. Meanwhile, a police commissioner informs Eric about the incident involving Ella, who was reported by a man who witnessed her body mutating. She agrees to help Eric find the girl in exchange for a dose of the drug for her family. He accepts. Ella arrives at Gina's place. Gina believes she killed Tully, but Ella proves her innocence. While hiding in Gina's apartment, she soon realizes that her spine and even her fingernails are beginning to transform. Suddenly, she starts devouring all the raw meat in Gina's fridge. Gina confesses where Tully got the drug. Ella shows her the growths on her body. The two girls argue, but are interrupted by a call from Solomon. He proposes a meeting at a specified location, claiming he can help her. Meanwhile, hitmen arrive in Luxembourg, where the mysterious Lazarus had made his call to Eric, but he is already gone. Instead, Eric receives a message warning him not to play God. Back at Gina's, Ella continues eating meat and suddenly says she doesn't want to see Gina anymore. Gina returns the headset Ella once gave her as a gift. Eric calls his father, but the elder O'Connor's only wants to be updated on results. Ella is captured by Solomon's people. Gina watches from a nearby car alongside Eric's operatives. They all witness Solomon bringing Ella to his lab, where she's strapped to a chair, but she easily tears through the restraints using the spikes growing from her arms and grabs a knife. Solomon explains that she's craving meat because her metabolism has accelerated. But suddenly police, alerted by Gina, storm in and arrest both Ella and Solomon. Ella is immediately charged with Tully's murder. The commissioner reports everything to Eric. Sitting in a holding cell, Ella discovers that one of her ears has died off, and something strange is growing in its place. She accuses Solomon of turning her into a monster, but he explains that within a few years, humanity will be extinct, and beings like her, mutants with enhanced abilities, will take their place. Eric arrives and takes both Solomon and Ella after Ella shows him her mutations. He promises to cure her and punish Solomon. Eric transports them to Aethera's research facility, promising Ella that he'll call her father in London. But instead, she's subjected to a series of tests which reveal that her DNA includes a branch of non-human genome. Eric tortures Solomon for information about the successful formula, but Solomon resists and refuses to reveal anything. Eric accuses him of stealing reagents worth a fortune, but this doesn't faze the scientists. Solomon believes his discovery is a great breakthrough and refuses to give it to corporate profiteers who decide who gets to live and who doesn't. He questions what makes the grandchildren of the rich more deserving than those of ordinary people. Eric orders the formula to be extracted at any cost. Meanwhile, Ella regains consciousness. Eric tells her the cause of her mutation and falsely promises to help reverse her condition if he can replicate Solomon's formula. Ella signs all the documents, but when Ella regains consciousness, her heightened hearing allows her to pick up a conversation happening behind the glass barrier. Eric is confessing to his father that she likely won't survive the extraction of the reagent from her genome. He admits he never even considered calling her father, who, being a diplomat, could cause them serious problems. Ella screams, revealing she's heard everything. Eric orders her to be sedated with gas. His father gives him 2 days to solve the issue. That evening, Solomon's friends arrive at the facility disguised as a courier service. Meanwhile, 2 orderlies enter Ella's room. Believing her to be asleep, they prepare to inject her with sedatives to take her to surgery, but Ella has long since awakened and broken free from her restraints. She attacks the men, demanding to know where Solomon is being held, and escapes the containment unit. An emergency alert goes out, and a manhunt for Ella begins. At the same time, Eric picks up his son Max at the airport and brings him to the facility, only to learn that Ella has escaped. Ella finds the block where Solomon is held, kills the guard, and unlocks his cell. Solomon confesses that his goal was to create a permanent antidote to distribute to all people on Earth, while Aethera only ever intended to save the chosen few. Meanwhile, Eric asks Angela to keep an eye on Max while he personally oversees the manhunt for Ella and Solomon. The 2 fugitives slip into an industrial tunnel just as their friends infiltrate the facility and, as a distraction, report a bomb threat. Eric orders the building to be flooded with gas to flush them out. Angela demands the evacuation of all personnel, and Eric is forced to agree. He runs to his office in search of Max. Meanwhile, Solomon and Ella make their way into Eric's lab. The scientist examines the formula and realizes that Eric is pursuing the same path, trying to merge human DNA with that of a dragonfly, the only creature immune to all toxins. He could have tested the drug on animals, but people are dying, and the cure is needed urgently. Ella is beautiful, he says, despite all her mutations. His ally, Lazarus, is ready to help everyone, but not everyone has access. At that moment, the first explosion rocks the building. Eric and Angela rush to his office, but Max is gone. Eric arms himself and sets out to find his son. Ella and Solomon meet up with their allies, but gas starts filling the building. The group flees to the garage. However, Ella's hypersensitive hearing detects Eric's footsteps. They hide in a restroom where Ella finds a terrified Max. She promises to protect him, and the boy mistakes her for a fairy. The team is forced to take Max with them, but they're intercepted by Eric. Solomon and one of his friends make it to the elevator, while Ella threatens to kill Max with the spike protruding from her arm. Eric fires anyway, risking his son's life. Ella leaps off the stairwell, and to everyone's shock, she soars over the gap under a hail of bullets. She makes it to the elevator just in time. Max cries, accusing his father of trying to kill the fairy. Angela tries to calm him down. Meanwhile, a courier van speeds out of the garage. Eric's men give chase, opening fire. The vehicle crashes and flips over, but when the guards reach it, only the driver is inside. Ella and Solomon have escaped into the forest. Tearing through a metal fence, they race along the top of a dam, but Solomon realizes he's too weak to go on. He confesses that he took the drug as well, but in a much smaller dose. He urges Ella to find Lazarus and give him the final ingredient needed for the antidote. They say goodbye and Ella leaps off the dam. Eric catches Solomon again, assuring him that he'll create another Ella. That same day, Gina finds a headset left in an envelope on her doorstep, the one Ella had returned to her. Solomon's friends find a way to tell the world the truth about what's happening and about Aethera's motto, mutate or die. Ella finally meets Lazarus, who turns out to be Angela, Eric's personal assistant. She offers Ella a partnership to provide the world with the choice of adaptive mutation as a means of survival. A sometimes erratic but solid dystopian thriller with decent mutation effects and a few character traits rarely seen in body horror films.